We are here for another episode of the Right
We
Quality Podcast. Once again, my name is Stephen Qualls II, aka Mr. Qualified. It's your boy. It's a bit backwards, but we're gonna still roll with it. Co-hosts, friends, let people know.
Ooh, man,
Oh man, it's Ashley Wright the first. This is so entertaining. I'm not gonna lie.
it's crazy. Whatever that man K Dot said. Uh, yeah, we're in a time. We're definitely in a time as we speak. I don't know what's going on, but we're here. We saw each other live. Like this
Yeah.
pod. We've
Never did.
officially linked in. They see I'm a real boy, and we were thugging, watching Shay not be consistent.
hmm
It
Tough
But
was
shoot. We can check in on March Madness though. How's y'all brackets? How y'all brackets looking?
in my league, cool. But in reality, trash.
like I got three of my final four. I'm
Same.
just yep. New Mexico was the only one where I was like, it's a March Madness
Well,
bracket. It's a March Madness bracket.
we
Ugh.
we kind of we kind of touched on this before the tournament started, at least in terms of blue bloods, but did not see Kentucky getting bounced in the first round. Also, did not realize that this has now been a pattern. Didn't realize how long this has
yeah,
been happening.
yeah.
Shudder.
Is Calipari out at Kentucky? Did I see that news?
No, so what you
No.
saw was he had a meeting with the AD and he is returning. But I'm pretty sure that meeting was, you know, wasn't
Dicey.
blissful.
Hey man, say man, listen. So when we were having the conversation about blue bloods, I'm not saying Kentucky is not, but where do we draw this line of like, okay, yes, you send players to the league, but you aren't necessarily furthering the program as a coach
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in this
yeah.
regard. How does can you be a blue blood if the program itself is not necessarily successful? I mean, I know we made those distinctions, but
hmm
Cal's in this weird place of like, okay, yeah, he can get this talent, and he usually sends two or three players to the league each year, but and maybe that's the reason why he can't build the program. But I don't think for Kentucky, like that's not a benefit to just have players being one and done all the time. So I don't know how y'all feel about that.
NIL is ruining everything for coaches. I think, the adjustment to recruit is probably difficult for Cal, the same way it was difficult for Saban at Alabama. And ultimately, that's part of the reason that he decided to retire. I think it's the same thing in the basketball circuit. We when we talked about it, Miguel pointed it out too. We have people committing to Alabama and these odd schools that you usually wouldn't go to if you were a top recruit. And it's a shift, it's changing. And whether or not he can adapt his coaching style to the times, or his recruiting style, I should say, to the times, remains to be seen. But like you said, it's become a pattern now. And it's been what, the past 4 years they've been bounced in the first round,
Something
first
like
or
that.
second.
Something like
Yeah. And NIL started around that time. So it's like, can they?
Has NIL been around for 4 years?
NIL has been around. I remember the notification coming
2020.
when I was in college.
2020.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
random question. What's been worse for college athletics, NIL or the transfer portal?
I would say NIL.
Interesting.
I feel
I'm
like
gonna say transfer
the
portal.
trans, oh,
'Cause
why?
I've heard a
I
lot of
feel like
coaches say
I feel
that. I've
like
heard, yeah.
kids have kids. Oh my God. I'm an OG. Uh, these youngins have too. I don't want to say too easy of an out whenever it's not working for them. But I mean, they've. It's a blessing and a curse because it's like those small programs. When someone pops off an attorney, they end up going to a bigger program, which
hmm
I think better for the player, where it's like you have more eyes, so therefore you're going to a program that's probably going to give you a better shot at making the league. But for these programs, it's like who was it? Who was that one team that They show him like literally every single clip of like this could be you. Happened 2 years ago. Literally the Cinderella story, like for last year,
Loyola,
not Loyola, other team,
St. Peter's.
St.
St.
Peter's.
Peter's. Yeah, yeah. It's like I know like what didn't their whole starting five pretty much disappear to every which team? So it's like for those teams it sucks where it's like, you built something, you got somewhere, and now it's like the guys that would probably run it back are now fleeing for what seems like greener pastures when you could be developing, an actual unit that can make something happen. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's yin and yang. You'll get some good, you'll get some bad. But I think, yeah, I think it's transfer portal overall worse. I don't think these guys getting money is bad. I think they should have been paid a minute ago.
I think that's the reason why I probably would say transfer portal too, because I think, and kind of you mentioned it on the last episode, Ashley, with NIL, because I don't think anybody will argue that the athletes should be getting compensated for their name, image, and likeness. I think how much one makes will always be dependent on their level of stardom or exposure. So in the same way it's in the pros, it was never expected for every athlete to get the same amount because every athlete's name, image, and likeness isn't being used the same. But the transfer portal, and Gail, you might have said it this way, so if I'm repeating it, just let me know. But it's hard because you don't want to say you don't want to give players power. But like Gail kind of alluded to, the idea that you can bounce around now just puts a lot of programs and teams in binds because recruiting is now more difficult. And if you recruit a player and you think you have them for 4 years, then you only end up with them for 1 or 2. Now you're back to the drawing board so much more earlier than looking at, okay, this is my class. This is how many people I can expect from this class to have for 4 years or to have for 3 or whatever the case may be. So it's tough because I think it's good because I think there have been times where players maybe should have been able to transfer and get out of a situation where they're stuck and get to a better situations. But now I
Yeah.
just feel like it might be being abused to some capacity, like you said, for those greener pastures or for people thinking that that kind of acceleration in their career, their trajectory can change by going from program to program, getting more exposure. Or now you can have somebody go in and say, "Hey, I don't like how this coach is challenging me or coming at me. I'm a transfer now." And
Yeah,
that's not necessarily good for the student athlete either. So
like, and I think it's happening on like a lot of levels where it's just
yeah,
like people are holding coaches hostage, being like, yeah, if you don't play my kid, I'm going to take him somewhere else. Or it's like, well, like if it doesn't suit me, I'm just going to take him, to this next school that said that they're going to offer him whatever amount of minutes at whatever varsity position. But at the same time, it's like that's not always going to benefit your kid. Now you just might be setting him up for failure in the long run. Where it's like he might have had a program where he had good coaches that would have like seen what he could have been and knew what he was, and now you're just throwing him to a system that might not know him as well, that might just kind of have different intentions, and now it's like all parties lose. So it's like, I think some people just have to see the process and have the bumps and the bruises that go along with it and see if it works or not. I think there are those situations, like you said, where it's like, yeah, like there's politics being involved. Like I might not see the court in these 3 to 2 years that I have left. It's like, okay, at that point, move. But I feel like, it sets a bad precedent in the game where it's just like, oh, if it's not working out for me, I'm just going to go to the next spot and the next spot and the next spot until, I get my way. So,
yeah, yeah. Ashley, did you have anything else to add to that, or did you get everything else?
No, like I feel that I added what I needed to add. And I understand why you guys say the transfer portal, but I feel like NIL has to do with that too. Because if I'm in the transfer portal and XYZ school is looking at me, but the Z school is giving me more money and I get the exposure, I'm going to Z regardless of if X was a better fit. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you can get best of both worlds, I guess I can't blame you, for getting the best of both worlds if you can. And it's all about the power. Like it's hard to say athletes shouldn't have the power to make these decisions for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was been the argument the whole time. So but it's the waters are getting muddy. I will say that
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
murky times are are going to be upon us very, very soon with both of those things. But back to the tournament. Any thoughts on Sweet 16 and Elite 8? This is being recorded before Sweet 16 and Elite 8 weekend, so y'all will see this after the fact. So just bear with us. But thoughts on who y'all feel like we will be seeing get past this weekend? I don't know. I think if Purdue loses, I know that'll be a big deal. Just given they're a 1 seed and they got Zach Edey, and they're expected to at least get to the Final Four, I'm assuming. But Gonzaga doesn't seem like a slouch. I don't know too much about them, but from what I've seen, from the little bit I saw in the tournament, that's definitely gonna be a good game. I have Houston winning in one of my brackets, so of
I
course
do too.
so of course I hope that they make it through the weekend. But honestly, I'll probably be more tapped into some of these games just because there are less games, so it's a bit easier to digest, and I'll probably have time to watch them more too. So I'll probably have a little bit better analysis as we approach the Final Four and after I really get a chance to watch some games. But we got a lot of higher seeds still in, so kind of the teams you would expect to get in. But I don't have a horse that I'm riding necessarily. Pause. But uh, but yeah, no, I definitely think this weekend will should be extremely entertaining. I think it'll be a lot of good games between Sweet 16 and Elite 8. Don't want to leave the women out completely. My bracket is shattered on that side, so no need to really talk brackets. I was guessing a lot anyway. But a lot of the heavyweights are still in contention. How are the heavyweight teams that we kind of talked about last episode? I don't want to keep saying heavyweight, but how are some of the favorites in the brackets looking to you all? So a UConn, Stanford, LSU, South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina's been extremely dominant, and I don't think that's going to change until they meet, another kind of contending team. But yeah, just thoughts on some of the women's teams that have stood out in the tournament so far.
Yeah, I want to give a big shout out to Audi Crooks from Iowa State.
Yes,
She
yes.
played phenomenally, like really great basketball. So I hope like she's not letting the fact that she got bounced haunt her. Because man, as a
Good ball.
freshman, she
She's
was
a
ball.
freshman.
Yes, a freshman.
Jesus.
Yeah, she's gonna be scary.
Yeah,
But
we.
yeah. But no, those heavyweights that you mentioned, Iowa, LSU, Stanford, they've had some tests. Like they've seen adversity through these first two rounds. Stanford against Iowa State, that was a tough win for them. Duke is on a roll. They're a seventh seed and they upset Ohio State in Ohio State. And now they have to face UConn, who's been playing some great basketball behind Paige Beckers. And
Yeah.
man, she's a problem too. So that I think that game is going to be very juicy. But as far as LSU, that first game against Middle Tennessee, I mean, not that first game, the second game against Middle Tennessee, they were tested. Haley Van Lith got sat for the second half to start. So they've seen some adversity too. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back against UCLA. Angel Reese will have her hands full against Lauren Betts down in the post, but that's going to be marquee. And then with Iowa, the test that they had against West Virginia in Iowa, I think a lot of people are starting to see Iowa's vulnerabilities. And this upcoming matchup, I think, will only expose Iowa more. Do I think that they are unable to win? Not at all, especially when you have Caitlin. But man, it's just good basketball on both sides. And I can't wait for this weekend. I really can't.
Yeah, no, I think that's good basketball all the way around. I don't know. I don't have really anything to reiterate. I'm looking at those next round matchups. Like we get Iowa versus LSU again, just like fireworks. I mean, looking down the line, I mean, South Carolina facing either of those teams, like no matter who's coming out of that, it's going to be a great show, no matter what. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. Like I hope all of those teams that have, those marquee players do make it through so we can see those matchups. That's really it. But yeah, you can't go wrong with either team really making it out of there.
Yeah. Also, I realized I had the wrong California school in mind. I thought LSU UCLA was us getting Juju and them, but
Oh,
No,
yeah.
yeah,
that's
no,
USC.
USC's got Juju.
However, if USC and UConn both win, that's going to be a game as well.
Mhm.
Page versus Juju is going to be something to see. So, and they're on the same side. So, ideally, I mean, UConn does have to beat Duke, like you said, they've been on a roll. But USC playing UConn potentially in the Elite Eight, and Iowa playing LSU, it's gonna be
Stupid.
Hmm.
getting down to it, getting
Hmm.
down to it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I definitely tapped in. Definitely tapped in this weekend. It's gonna be a lot of good basketball. Final thing to wrap up March Madness talk. So of course, another Mind the Game episode dropped today.
Hmm.
So was watching that. But Brian and JJ had a segment where they were talking about how difficult it is to watch college basketball for them, at least. And we've kind of talked about why it's difficult to watch during the regular season and things of that nature. But specifically for the March Madness tournament, right? Um, do you all feel like March Madness is more about the excitement of uncertainty or actually watching a good stretch, like a stretch of actual good basketball? If that makes
Definitely,
sense.
definitely more about the uncertainty.
The former, yeah.
Yeah, that's literally why we call it March Madness. It's madness. Like it's unpredictable. We don't know what's coming. We don't know who's going to get upset. It's more so about that.
Does that compensate for, I don't want to say the lack of, but does that compensate for the fact that we may not necessarily we may not be getting great basketball in totality in terms of like getting a large number of really good games, but you might
Mhm.
see a team that you didn't expect kind of go on this run. And it's not to say that they're not playing good basketball, but it's more so the idea of it's cool to see, okay, a team caught you by surprise because you didn't know how to scout for them because maybe you haven't seen them all season. But does that make for good does that make for good basketball? I guess I feel like that's a nitpick question, but I guess I'm just more so trying to figure out like what we're watching for, because I know I will be watching for good basketball, if that makes sense.
I
It's
think,
good for viewers. Sorry, go
yeah.
on.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I would say good for viewers because like they just don't like predictability. Where it's like you watch any playoff series in the NBA and you're like, I can presume that this team will beat this team. Like you get a couple where it's like, yeah, they got 3-1. This team upset this team, 8-1. Where it's like it's gonna happen a few times with March Madness, where it's like every year you don't know who it's gonna be. It's not like you're going in there to watch, oh my goodness. Like even though uh, shouts out Sanford, the best play I've seen in college basketball. Double elevator. Uh, First dude runs around, sets like a curl pin down on big man. Second dude that runs around goes through the elevator doors, so it's like a double seal. Best play I think I've seen run. They needed a three. They knew Kansas knew that they were going to take a three. Still got one wide open. Where it's like you're gonna find gems in a basketball
Mhm.
game, and then they're going to ruin it by calling a bullshit block. First cuss of the day, only cuss. But I think yeah, you're only there because Sanford's about to beat Kansas. Oh my God! Like we need to all turn to this. That's like why you're there, not because like even though I'm a nerd and I saw that, I'm like rewind that please. Uh, yeah, we're all there because a 12 was about to be the 4 seed,
That's
or
real. That's
13
valid.
before one of those.
Yeah, and I think that all boils down to the college game anyway. And if you just have things you don't like or don't prefer about the college game, March Madness doesn't change that, but it does give you the opportunity for excitement because it's like, oh, maybe I haven't seen this 16 seed play at all because they're not playing nationally televised games and nobody's talking about them. But no, they have players, or no, they do run really good sets, or or they are really well coached, whatever the case may be. And I think just as much as players get shine, I think a lot of coaches from those schools get an equal amount of shine, when their teams are performing well and things of that nature. So I do think that's dope. But I thought that was interesting because I feel like a lot of people have the similar sentiments about college basketball in general, but we all still tune into March Madness either way. So just
Yeah,
want to throw that out there. But we can move on to the pros, the professional leagues. Um, it's kind of a lot going on. It's definitely not a dull period, but it's kind of hard to really get into too much because we're just waiting to see what exactly the playoffs looks like. but still really exciting nonetheless. But Gail, you mentioned a great point. In the first half of this week, we've seen some really big leads be cut down by teams that are considered contenders, for the most part. But that led me to realize that I think we've seen all season that there's no such thing as a safe lead in the NBA anymore.
No.
Kind of a two-sided question. Leads haven't been safe in the regular season, right? Do y'all think that changes? Like the idea that a lead isn't safe, does that change come playoff time? Also, does leads not being safe, does this depend on team, or is the league just that full of talent and explosive talent that it just doesn't, because a player can catch fire or a team can catch fire at any given time? Does it lean one way or the other on that second question, or is it just a balance of it kind of just depends on what it is that night? But it could be 50-50 either way.
Yeah, leads are even more unsafe in the playoffs because, something's at stake. You don't want to go home. You're vying for a championship. And then as far as the team question, I think a lot of people forget, like, although some teams are bottom barrel, they're still trying to play upset. Like, this is still professional basketball. So regardless of what you've seen from a team as far as them being consistently bad or consistently good, that's thrown out the window because any given night, anything can happen. You know what I mean? Like, no one was expecting Boston to blow a 30-point lead against the Hawks, but it happened. So I think it has more so to do with the wherewithal of that team that night. Like, the Hawks wanted to go play upset. They're still trying to put themselves in a decent position. They're not completely eliminated yet. So again, it's all to do with that mindset that night.
I think leads in games are more safe in the playoffs because usually a team that's getting buried is going to be like, all right, let's get it back next game. We'll readjust. It is what it is. They're not going to strain themselves to possibly scrape back a tough win in game one when it's like, okay, we can just readjust and get back at it game two. But I think leads in series are less safe than what they were, where it's like a 3-1 lead is a 3-1 lead of days past. But I think
Interesting.
the reason that leads get blown so easily now in the NBA is that I think just dudes check out at certain points in the game. They take a couple pop ISO shots, and the other team is working. Like the pace of play is so much faster, and like
Mm-hmm.
they're getting more points per possession by shooting a lot more threes. And when it was like, all right, we got to get to Hakeem every time and try and scrape back one by one from this 20-point deficit. That's 10 possessions for threes. That you can cut that down to damn near 7. So it's like I think it's just where the game is right now. And then, yeah, I think there is a lot more talent per team where it's like they could have a guy that just, gets hot at a random point in the quarter and then they drop 4 threes. That's 12 points knocked off the lead right there. Like a 20-point lead is like a 10-point lead of the 2000s. But like, a 30-point lead is pretty much like the old 20-point lead where it's like, yeah, they could make something happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Great points by both. But Gail, I think it's really interesting the concept of in a playoff game, a lead is safer, but a series lead is not safe. I find that very curious though, because if you're in a playoff series, I I don't know if I agree or disagree, but I think the idea that a team could be like, yeah, okay, we're just going to pack this one up and worry about it next game. A part of that feels like giving up, but then I could also understand the flip side of, do we exert the energy to try to come back and potentially still fall short just to not have the gas the next game? Now, granted,
Yeah.
they get more rest days, right? So we're not talking about a back to back or nothing like that. But it's still but for me in the playoffs, it's more like more morale. So you fight back, you claw back, and you still don't get that win. You still lose by
Yeah.
1, 2, or 3 or whatever. How many teams, how many players have enough mental capacity to bounce back, even if the game is 2, 3 days later, and not still be stung from that loss where they exerted so much energy trying to get it. And then don't let that happen two games in a row. You know what I'm
And
saying? Like, so
that
I get both ends of it. Yeah.
and the other team has more incentive to stomp them out. Where it's like a regular season game that the Bucks has dropped against the Lakers. It's like we're the 2 seed, we're up 20, Ants looking hobbled. We can take a couple ISO possessions off here and there, and then it turns into the game getting close. Turns into D'Lo hitting a couple threes. It's OT. We go double OT, and it's just like, all right, who has to play for more? The Lakers or the Bucks at that point? Obviously, the Lakers are playing for to not be in the play in for their season. So it's like they're obviously going to do more to get out of that, and the Bucks probably are mentally like, well, we should have buried this a long time ago. Like, and then the game is the game. Then you see Malik and Dame sitting next to each other while Austin Reeves is wide open. Where it's like, in the playoffs, they're probably a little bit more in tune of like, this is where we are. If this happens, we switch. Like they'll, if the game is close, they'll do a little bit more to get that. But I feel like in those games where it's just like we should have had this already, they're just gonna kind of go through the motions because it's like, all right, we just got to make the playoffs healthy. Who cares about being the Lakers 2 weeks till where the
Yeah.
fourth quarter is going to look like that. But in the playoffs, if they have the Lakers in a 7-game series, they're probably going to be a bit more foot on gas and really try and stomp them out.
Is it expected for that shift in mentality to be a given come the transition from regular season to playoffs? Because I think we've heard people talk about this all season where obviously a team builds habits over the regular season that ideally translate in the playoffs when execution needs to be higher, when understanding and awareness needs to be higher, all of these things. But with that mentality, Gail, because I don't disagree. I feel like a lot of teams, there are teams that give up. There are teams that's like, oh, we down 20. We just gonna take the L today and worry about this back-to-back game we got tomorrow. But then some may have something to play for, so they push it. But for a team like Milwaukee, for example, right? Can you afford it, but do you like to have that mentality? Like, granted, while the game felt like a playoff game, and while I'm not saying the Bucks didn't treat it as such, I could understand why when the game did get close, being out of gas, whatever the case may be, yeah, you hate to see it, but you just chalk it up and you move on from it. But is it a given that mentality shifts where in a playoff series now, there are no games off, there are no plays off, there are no we'll fold on this one and get the next one because you can't. Maybe the game where they came back from 20 and this guy caught his rhythm, now he's on fire for the rest of the series because y'all catch his rhythm one game. That's I feel like that's the balance and that's the dynamic of what you allow and what you do in the regular season and what's deemed okay because it's the regular season, not the playoffs, because it all still translates. So while it's all understandable, it's interesting because I think that comes down to players, team makeup, coaching, whatever the case may be, as to if you build on that or if that becomes your identity, because if it becomes your identity, then that's how a lot of teams get screwed in the playoffs. In this final stretch of the season, next topic, who would you all say is the hotter team, Dallas or Houston?
Oh, that's a good question. I think Houston has the hotter player. I wouldn't even say that. I think it's Dallas. I think
Yeah, like I gotta go Dallas because they have the better record. Like Houston is the hottest team now, but they're still like 10-9. Dallas has been trending upwards, not as hot, but with a better playoff seeding, which yields a better, like it's not like, oh, we're just kind of like here to make some noise like the Pelicans a couple years ago. Like this seems more robust, more like it'll actually get something out of it.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think Houston's hot streak is more impressive.
Impressive, yeah.
I think that this is what we expect from Dallas. The only reason we are talking about it in stance of them being hotter is because of where they fell throughout the season. I don't think anybody is surprised by the way Luka is playing, by the way Kyrie is playing and how the team is playing after the trade deadline. I don't think anybody. You're surprised?
At how well they're meshing so early.
Fair.
Like PJ Washington coming to Dallas, it's like it was instant. You know what I mean? That's what's surprising. The fact that those players are playing well, no, because that's what we've grown accustomed to from them. But how quick they've been able to mesh, yeah.
That's valid. Houston has been on this hot streak without Sengun, and I think that is what makes it impressive to me, because now I look at it like, well, they've hawked down the Warriors, right? Sengun seems to be looking to return right before this playoff push that we're calling, because they still aren't in yet. Warriors are on tilt, struggling, right? Where do y'all feel like the Lakers will eventually fall? Because Gail, we didn't forget. You said that the Lakers were going to fall out of the play-in. You said they weren't.
I said they were going to get popped first. They were going to get.
Okay, no, you did say they were going to lose.
They're going to pop by the Warriors.
Yes, you did. You did say that.
So I have no clue.
Still for the same?
Yes. I mean, yes and no. Where it's like yes because the uncertainty of it all. Like who loses these games down the stretch to end up at what point to get popped? So it's like you could still be a 7 seed and miss the playoffs if you lose 2. So I'm sticking with it. I still don't know how all this is ending though. Is Houston gonna make the playoffs? Are they just playing spoilers? Are they a real threat? No, but I have no clue. It's so messy. It's so messy.
It's super messy. I don't know either, but I will say when I told y'all the Wolves would slide out of first, y'all thought I was crazy.
Cat got hurt.
Now,
I mean,
I guess he was a big part. No, I just got to take my W. But
true.
No, ooh, the bottom of the West. That's so close to call.
Yeah.
I don't see the Lakers getting out of a play-in spot. I think they will be in the play-in. I don't see them going all the way to 6. But I do see them. This is hard. I do see them making the playoffs, obviously. I do see them winning their first play-in game.
Yeah.
I think that getting out of the play-in would be miraculous for them. I do think they'll jump Phoenix at some point, but I do think just given the way they look right now and given their schedule, I think they should have a relatively high ceiling for the rest of the season and where they ultimately fall in the play-in. Final question. I'm really excited to ask you all this. We can do a list of 10, but I do want it to be in order.
You're so messy.
The list of players who have the most to prove this postseason.
Bet. Okay.
Who's top of your list, Ashley? I need to know. Who's top of your list has something to prove?
Jason Christopher Tatum.
Is that his middle name?
Yeah, I think. I just gave him one, really. I'm guessing.
Bruce.
I think I've seen Christopher, though.
I think it's a great number 1. I think Joel Embiid is surprisingly number 2. If he makes a comeback, I think he is, albeit hobbled, also has very much something to prove. 3, I'm gonna say Giannis too. I think that talk is still there.
What is there to prove?
Now,
dunk man.
I will say this: Giannis is on my list of 10. Don't get me wrong; he's not 3. That's way too high for somebody.
I think there's still too much. I think he still has more to prove than like a Luka, even though Luka has only made it to a certain point. In some people's eyes.
Miguel, I'm asking for your list.
Yes, and that's my list. I have Giannis 3.
So you think Giannis has more to prove than Luka does?
I'm going. My brain is everyone's brain. I'm using the common NBA watcher's mind.
AI.
I'm taking
Google.
AI. You literally just gave it away. Thank you.
Yeah, you did. My brain is everyone's brain.
I am using what I know.
You are
argue the
Chat
people's point.
GPT
I am using the
personified.
people's point. I'm speaking for the people.
No.
That's all I'm doing. Just a,
Okay, so I
that's
agree.
crazy.
I agree with Tatum at 1. And that's him being 1 is not a knock as much as it is opportunity.
Absolutely.
He has the most approved because this should be the year that he does what everybody expects. Like the expectations match the opportunity here. That's the only reason he's number 1. Just for those that feel like we got a bias against JT because we don't. I agree with Embiid being 2. At least hit the conference finals. You know, man. That honestly, truly, no shade. You know what I'm saying? But 3, Giannis isn't 3 because I'm not putting Giannis over Dame on this list. In regards to who needs to prove more. Because Dame, and also for the Bucks' success, Dame will need to be better. So Dame has more to prove because what has been the knock on Dame? Oh, he's in Portland. He's this great player. He's clutch in the playoffs. No team built around him for success. No excuse. You have a team built around you for success. Does that come with adjustments and everything? Absolutely. But when they get down to it, you want to win a championship, right? That's what you've been saying. This is your best opportunity to do that, and y'all have a legit chance. You have to do your part. Has to be more efficient, has to be better. So he's going to be higher, and he's 3 for me.
Yeah, I think that pushes Giannis to 5 for me because then I put Doc Rivers 4.
So Giannis is still not as high on this list for me. I see what's happening, Miguel. So do you think Giannis is higher on this list than a Porzingis?
I don't think anyone's really clocking Porzingis.
Yeah, but Porzingis.
No one's pocket watching Porzingis.
Now. Let's not forget. Porzingis, like when he came into the league, big expectations, right?
Yeah.
Had a solid little stint in New York before the injury, right?
Yep.
Went to Dallas, didn't really work out. Went to Washington, had solid numbers, but I mean, just not a team that was really vying for anything. He is in a situation where it's not just about his numbers. Like they matter, but he also has a legit opportunity to win something. And if he does not show up, and that is the reason why the Celtics or if him showing up does play a role in the Celtics getting over that hump, I don't think we're clocking him because Porzingis is not. Nobody's looking at Porzingis like if he gets a chip, he's on this list, or if he gets a chip, he gets into this conversation. But as a player who was in the postseason on a contending team, does he have something to prove this offseason?
I would have Jaylen Brown having more on his shoulders than KP. Just off price tag alone. Like we're paying you $300 million and you can't crack, this far in the conference final, wherever they may end up.
So the reason why JT is a star, right? No disrespect to Jaylen Brown. JT is the star of the team. Take contract out of it. I'm not saying JB doesn't have responsibility, but with JT and JB, you talking about players who done been to the conference finals already, who done been to a finals already. So in terms, the last hump for them is to get the chip. Like they've shown they can get to a finals. Yeah. But also with the makeup of the team, Porzingis is the key. He's the X factor. I think that Jaylen Brown has something to prove, right? I don't know personally if I have him over Porzingis just because I feel like JB and JT are already the tandem, but we've already acknowledged that them alone isn't enough. So in terms of who has something to prove, that's why I think Porzingis is still higher because he has more to prove in his role than Jaylen Brown does. To me.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
I don't expect Jaylen Brown to not be Jaylen Brown with all that comes with.
What is being Jaylen Brown though?
Being Jaylen Brown
inconsistent.
Exactly.
In the playoffs, Jaylen Brown should be 24 or 25 a game, right? I get that he doesn't consistently do that. I just think that we've seen what they can do with his inconsistency. His inconsistency hasn't stopped them from getting to conference finals. Didn't stop them from getting to the finals. So when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the fact that we already know what to expect from them, and we know what their ceiling is, with the duo being like head over heels talent wise than the rest of the roster. But they've never had a third option like a Porzingis. They've never had another 20-point scorer consistent.
I get what you're saying, but I feel like you letting JB take too much of a back seat. Way too much of a back
I don't think
seat.
he
With the
will.
$300 million backseat.
I don't.
Yeah.
So are y'all saying because he's the number 2 option and because of his contract, he just has more to prove, because if they don't win a championship, that falls on his shoulders more than
Absolutely.
Porzingis?
Yeah, and because of his history,
Absolutely.
because KP has been like one bad year in Dallas where it didn't work in the playoffs, but other than that, he's been injured. Where it's just like JB, we've seen him there again and again and again, and like I feel like that is where the pressure becomes more surmounting, where it's like it's just piling on of like, all right, well, when are we going to see the success in the playoffs? Now you have Porzingis, so now it's like you two should be able to do this. Right? I feel like the pressure is more so on those front two guys than it is, the guy that they brung in this year to see if it works.
I get that. I can't argue that. But to your point, when you say because Porzingis is there, they should be able to do more. What I'm saying is, Porzingis, what you're being asked to do, like what we're looking for Jaylen Brown to do, he's already been asked to do.
Like
And
KP was like, "Oh, we're bringing the championship piece."
yes, that's exactly why they gave up Marcus Smart. Because mind you, Drew fell into
Yeah,
their lap. They sacrificed that identity to go get somebody else who could give them more offense. Like that was their
yeah,
initial move. They lucked up and got Drew because of what we did. So that's why I say, mind you, if they don't get Drew and they just did something else, but like their main roster featured the 2 J's and basically KP, like he'd be even more of an X factor.
yeah,
So that's why I'm saying, I guess because for Tatum and Brown, it's already been established. I guess that's why I think KP is a bit higher. Like, I mean, I would say him and Jaylen Brown are probably right there. I just think he's a bit higher because I don't think his role can be downplayed, because they are the contenders they are in large part to his role. Like, yeah, Jaylen Brown is great. Jason Tatum is great. But them having 3 20-point per game scorers is more scarier than just the wing tandem that they
yeah.
have. So that's my logic on it. But I do agree Brown is in there too, because the inconsistencies are, I think because of JT's inconsistencies, Jaylen Brown's inconsistencies come to light more, because you never have to account for both of them being off the same night, but it's almost like, I guess you never really know. So it's still, but then they have
Yeah.
a hell of an insurance policy in Porzingis too, in case one of them is off. So, unless they playing Joker, but nonetheless, that's that. So we agree on the top.
So
We agree on the top three, though. We agree on the
yeah.
top three. So we got Tatum, Embiid, and Dame. We agree on the top three.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So 4 is where it seems like y'all have Jaylen Brown, or would y'all have somebody else above Jaylen Brown?
No, honestly, I will put Jaylen Brown second because I feel like Embiid. I feel like with the injury, Embiid does make the list, but with the injury, how much expectations can we have on
I
him?
agree.
If he doesn't get hurt and he has this MVP season that he was having, where he's dropping 40 almost a night,
He
like
might be one. He'd be one. He didn't
yeah,
get injured for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think, we have to be considerate of that. And I want to put Cat on my list, but again, being injured, because it's like, now how many times are we gonna get, like when we had the conversation, do you trade Cat and keep a Nas Reed and develop that way? But in some ways, Cat makes this list too.
Yep.
But I'll let him slide down as well. So I think I'll have Embiid 4. So for me, it's Jason, Jalen, Who did I put third? Help me.
Dame.
Dame, then Embiid, then Cat.
I
Okay.
think for me it'd be Jason. I think Dame would be slid to second. I think Embiid would be third. I think Giannis would be fourth. Jaylen Brown fifth.
I am really interested in why Giannis is so high on this list for you.
Me
Like I
For
too.
said,
me,
he's in this
I
list of 10, but top five.
I just think the just people in general. I don't think that he's gotten his respect as a basketball player yet. I don't think that he gets his respect in terms of being able to know the game and being able to impact the game on skill. I still think that they still talk about him as run and dunk man that can't hit a free throw and travels. I feel like he needs a couple more. He needs more playoff success too, because people still see that championship as a fluke. They still don't. They're like, oh, he injured Kyrie and KD's toe is on the line. But if not, they're not winning that series ever. So I feel like to really prove that he can is winning when everyone's healthy.
Hmm.
I I understand that is a narrative that the media is portraying. I don't really feel like too many championships are truly a fluke because let's not forget that Giannis hyperextended his knee before the
He
finals,
did,
and
yeah.
he was not supposed to be back as soon as he was. Nowhere near 100%.
Yep.
Um,
But we know this. We know this. The casuals do
but what I'm saying is a lot of championships have some luck involved. A lot of teams
100%.
have players miss it. So I'm saying to that narrative, that's my argument. As far as him proving that, I think it's hard to say that Giannis has to prove that he's this level of player by meeting the standards of others. I agree that like yeah, it would be nice to see him get more playoff success. It would be nice to see him get to at least another conference finals, especially with this current roster. But I I also don't think that the last two losses in the playoffs have been Giannis's fault.
He was hurt last one, and then
So
before that,
in terms of Giannis
team.
before that, Middleton was hurt. But
Yeah,
as far as Giannis's like what Giannis has to prove, I don't think Giannis will falter. I have
yep,
not seen Giannis falter in the playoffs. Like, yes, the Bucks collapsed, but when you look at what Giannis did in 4 and 5, I don't think that's him as an individual for the context of this list. I don't think that's him faltering. So, in terms of what he has to prove, I think we know what to expect from Giannis. So if we're going off of what he has to prove by the Bucks winning a championship for this list, that's a bit dicey for me because,
okay.
like I said, I think it more depends on Dame's contributions because I feel like I know what I'm gonna get from Giannis in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Even based on the regular season, I know what I'm gonna get from Giannis in the playoffs. So that's why he's not high. But because of the narrative, he'd make it because it's still like if you're gonna be this great, if you're trying to work your way into a top 20, top 15, top 10 thing, then yeah, you're gonna need some more hardware anyway. But that's why
yeah,
he would be top 5 for me. That
yeah,
that's why I'm a bit surprised you have him so high because in terms of what he's proved individually already, like he is the only name we've mentioned so far that has a chip.
yeah.
And the other players we would name probably don't have a chip. So that's where I'm like, how can he be higher on this list than somebody who don't got a chip?
Yeah, I just think it's just narrative because I feel like even with that chip, people don't see it as a chip. They classify it as the bubble. They classify it lower than the bubble ring.
No, they don't. No,
Oh,
they don't. That's crazy. That's
yeah,
crazy.
that's sick.
100% because once they came out and said, "Oh yeah, that was the hardest championship that ever was gotten," then that validated everything they needed to hear. Once they heard that it was the most pure form of hoops, then that changed what everyone thought immediately after it happened, and then revisionist history came to be. With Giannis's, I continue to see he injured Kyrie. KD's toe shouldn't have been on the line. KD has a ring. I see it from people from Milwaukee on my
So,
Facebook. I'm like, bro,
so
shut up.
Gail, but okay, so remove the Milwaukee bias, remove the media narrative of it all. He's
Gone.
still that high to you?
Yeah, because I think without Milwaukee bias, I still see the narrative from national media of like he is not who we think he is. But like people still think that he's riding on the coattails of Chris Milton saving his ass in late game situations.
Mhm.
I
I mean,
give me what I'm telling you.
I
My
understand
AI,
the thought of wanting Giannis to have more of his skill set on display in high pressure situations such as the playoffs. I get that whole thing because, I do hear a lot about people saying that his game is one note, but it's one note that you can't defend. It's the same like with a Shaq, you know what I mean? Like one note game post game, but he's still just great at his game. And I don't think you could take that away from Giannis. We don't take it away from Shaq or Hakeem or, anyone else that was dominant. So why are we taking it away from Giannis? I do.
I understand that.
I mean, I feel like people that are thinking that Giannis has more to prove are fishing for something. And do I want Giannis to win more rings? Yes. And I think he needs that as far as the argument of his legacy. But proving something, I don't
So
know.
so Gail, it's not super comparable, but I look at the fact that LeBron has nothing else to prove. Like if he gets more things, great. But in terms of what he has to prove, nothing. I don't
Yeah.
think Giannis has as much to prove past how great will he be. Like
Yeah.
anything done at this point is
Legacy.
legacy building, but it's
Hmm.
not him.
Yeah.
He's already proved that he's arrived. He's already proved that he's a superstar. He already proved that he's a franchise player. He's already proved most of the individual things that you can prove. So even to put him like to have Giannis in the same field of this list as Embiid, crazy to me. No disrespect to Embiid. As Jalen Brown, crazy to me. Even as Dame, all respect to Dame, and of course, obviously know why he was brought to Milwaukee, but those are not the same situations. So to me, he cannot be that close to those players. I think 7 to 10 or like 8 to 10 on this list. Cause like if Kawhi is on this list, which he may not be for y'all, but if Kawhi was on this list for me, the argument would be because of narrative, because you're already talking about a two-time Finals MVP, 2 times NBA champion. So what we're looking for him to prove is, did you just luck up a few years ago, or are you actually still like that? Since you do have a potential contending team,
And
around you.
I think just to clarify, I think the reason I have him there is because even when you name him with those players where it's like Tatum, Embiid, Dame, uh, I think, I mean, hell, we still have the conversation who's more skilled, AD or Giannis? Like,
Do we?
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I don't have
Even
that
after LA,
conversation.
Yeah.
AD is
no, but
way
I
more
mean, like,
skilled than Giannis.
there we go. Well, this is what I mean. This is what I mean, where it's like there is no like, no matter what this man does, like there is always going to be a knock on what he's doing. Where it's like, if he's not doing it as polished as certain guys, if he's not doing it as, without, charging through people to do it, I feel like there is still a knock on his game because it is the way it is. And I feel like he doesn't get the respect that Shaq does because he isn't this back to the basket big, where he is a bit more of like a combo, like from the wing, drive into the paint, knock somebody's down, get a bucket, where it's like that's where I think like there is still something that needs to be proven. Where it's like that that is still there outside of the Milwaukee bias. It's like you can take yourself out of Milwaukee. The narrative is he wouldn't be able to do it if there's a healthy Kyrie, healthy KD. Where it's like I do stand 10 toes on that. People think that that ring was more of a fluke than most of the others in the past 5 years that happened. Like if you include Denver, if you include Golden State, if you go back to Toronto 2019, I feel like you are going to pull where people are going to say that that was the flukiest ring, and there was a bubble ring where we had the best record that year, and then COVID happened, and now everyone comes back healthy after 3 months rest. It I it is what it is. But That is my mentality on why he lands there, because like even when you name him with all those players, skill set wise, he's still probably going to be 10 behind skill wise. He's going to be 10 behind everyone on this list. Even if I throw Paul George on this list, even if I throw
Who
James
cares
Harden
about
on
the
this list.
skill
I was
though?
just gonna say, like,
I'm
there
just
Skill
saying,
doesn't play a
it,
role in this
in
list.
in terms of what it means, like to have playoff success and what it means to attain that success. I feel like there are still knocks to where Giannis made it, where it's
but
like there's still going to be doubts about like why he was able to get that ring back in the day.
but it's like Kyrie is more skilled than Book, and had Book won that chip against you guys, does that take away from how great Book is? No, it doesn't, because he's still a big contribution to what his team does, and he's still consistent, and he's still a name that we respect. Like, I don't know
But
if you could
I,
take away from.
it's the same when Steph had his however many before, like until he got his fourth one. There were still people that were like, he's got to prove it because he did it with
Ooh,
AD twice.
I don't know who needs Steph to prove
But
anything.
there was like this sigh of relief when Steph got his fourth one of like, oh look, he was able to do it on his own pretty much.
Steph already had did it on his own, and the only reason the fourth championship mattered and the finals MVP mattered was honestly for top 10 consideration. Like that
But
at
that
that
that is
point,
still
The shooting record, the fourth ring, the MVP win against a younger team who had great players too, on the road, and it's back to your big three: Clay, Dre, Steph.
And I'm saying if you
It's
asked people before that year, they were going to say who still had something to prove in the playoffs. Steph would have been one of them
man.
because he didn't have that Finals MVP, and it
Miguel.
still does go to like aura building or what is it, legacy building. But I still think that plays a part in who has something to prove in the playoffs.
So Miguel, you keep saying people. What I'm trying to figure out
My
is this
AI.
how you feel, or are
No,
you going off of how people
like
feel?
I said, I'm answering for the general populace. This
Chat
takes no
GPT.
this takes I take no joy in answering this. I think that man has zero things to prove in this world ever. He's an immigrant that's so like shared shoes with the Gnosis to make it to where he's at. He has zero things to prove. But I'm going off of what people are going to say. I don't agree. I'm just giving you with what I got.
Luca,
I'm not there yet with Luca.
in terms of
I, I
like
got
do something.
I got PG at 6.
I'm off the
Okay, I
PG. I'm off
respect
the
it.
PG train.
Oh,
I'm
you have no expectations.
No, I don't.
That's
The
juicy.
minute
hey,
the
oh, I
minute the
mean,
minute PG basically said I'm a Robin, what more do I like? What more do I have to expect from you? You
Mm.
clearly, so you said you're a help player. You're B. You're option B. I don't have any expectations of you then. In terms of this list, because everybody
that's
on
all I
this
gotta
list,
say. I want to be robbing the podcast. No one's gonna expect a thing out of me now. I can just log in, just kind of look at
We
y'all.
don't know what to expect. That's the thing.
we never do. We never do. Um, Harden,
Harden is my 7.
Oh, okay.
Anthony Edwards.
Oh,
I got Shea before I got Ant.
I don't have
That's
either of them
crazy.
on my list. I think it's
Because,
too early for the both of them.
because Ant, I
I
only have
don't
him.
think it's too early.
I literally have Ant 9 after Shea 8 because Shea has a healthy team going into this playoffs, and I feel like there's more that you can expect with them. Ant is already going in one
So
one
does Ant.
one one cat down.
So Ant doesn't. So Ant has less to prove now because he doesn't have Cat.
Yeah,
That's
I think.
big.
Pretty much.
That's
I
big.
mean, hey, I'm going by what the people are gonna
But
Because
say.
I'm not.
He didn't.
Steve,
He didn't
I'm
have
not talking
help.
about team
He
success.
didn't
I'm
have
not
help.
talking about team success
you're
necessarily.
saying personal player, but when you said Porzingis, you mentioned who he has, his
I
team.
but I also mentioned his role. Now, granted, so I'm not saying the team aspect of it is
Mhm.
not a part of it. But even with Cat, they wasn't winning no chip. I still don't think that I really don't think they was getting to the conference finals.
So what are the expectations?
But the expectation is Ant's still supposed to take a leap. What Ant is supposed to prove is I'm not just top like this leap I took in the regular season, these expectations I've had throughout this season, I can continue and still show in the playoffs. And I think he has more of an opportunity to prove that without Cat.
Just because
So
ants can
let
lift 3
me.
times their body weight doesn't mean he can lift the weight of this team.
So you're saying that Ant could get bounced in the first round, but as long as he's averaging 30 in the series, he's cool. He's cool.
Depends on the first round matchup.
Mm.
What are the expectations? Like, what does he have to live up to this season for you to be like, okay, I'm satisfied with that,
People
or
say
this postseason?
people saying Ant can be the face of the league, right?
Who's people?
You.
Oh, you're right. You. A lot of people are
So
saying.
so if Ant can be the face of the league, what MJ doing his third season? You know what I'm saying? Like what I ain't
Okay.
saying he got to do that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if he face of the league, he should be turned up this playoffs.
Okay.
Whether they get bounced in the first rounds, whether he take them further than people expect, there should be a large gap in what he does and the impact he has in the playoffs than in the regular season.
Got you.
So when I'm saying prove in the postseason, it's like Ant needs to prove that, oh yeah, no, face of the league, I can be here. That's not them getting to the conference finals. That's him. Say they draw Dallas, right? They may not be favored in that, right? But if he go toe for toe with Luka, he
Mm-hmm.
proved what he needed to prove, and he did all that he can do. Because
Sounds like
nobody may expect him to win that series. But am I looking for Ant to average? He averaged in 26 regular season. Might
sounds
have
like
might have to be a 30 piece in the playoffs. I'm just saying.
sounds like me in
He
the
ain't
lab mate.
29. You said what?
Oh, okay.
Don't worry. Uh, so 9 I have Ant.
Yeah.
So SGA, because he has a more complete team,
Yeah,
he
that
has
he
more to prove.
Yeah. Y'all
yes
healthy.
because yep, you should be able to lead, and you're
What's their
you're top
ceiling?
2 seed, and you're a
What's their
top 2 seed.
ceiling? What's their ceiling?
Western Conference Finals. You're a top 2 seed in the West.
Not could forget seed. Is their ceiling? If they were 3 or 4, which is only a matter of
No,
games
that's
at
middle
this
of the
point.
pack.
But it's
Yeah.
only a matter of games at this point.
If he's putting on Instagram, I'm number 2, not satisfied with 2, can't be number 2, then don't be number 2.
Yep,
Simple.
I think it's more so because he's an MVP candidate.
that too.
I feel like if you're an MVP candidate, top 3 at that.
All right, who's your number 10? Audience is gonna hate
I'll
me.
let y'all finish. But my list is, I'm not going to say drastically different, but there are a few names on my list that you guys haven't mentioned.
Throw him in there.
Yeah, say it.
So we had JT, Jalen, Dame, and Bede basically, and Cat, all in common. I have Anthony Davis on my list. It's not a name I heard you guys say. I also have Zion Williamson on my list.
Zion's a
I,
good name.
I have Devin Booker on my list. I have Brad Beal on my list for the same reasons that you have Porzingis. And I have Paul George on my list. Now, I understand why you don't have Paul George, which made me second guess that. That's why he's 10th, because it's like, what more should I expect from you? You're wasting, like, my energy trying to get something out of you in the playoffs. But,
Top 5 hairlines in the NBA.
oh, for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
Jalen Rose, him.
Yeah.
You know,
Very strong hairline.
I don't have expectations for Beal. Not because I don't think he's in a similar. So with him and PG, it's like when I'm looking at like what they have to prove, Beal's had an injury-ridden season. So even as they get to the playoffs, I mean, don't know if he's 100%. Not saying that necessarily matters a lot, but um, he's also your third option. So it's just kind of like, yeah, you could prove that you work great as a third option, even though you're first option talent. Like, but it's kind of hard to. I feel Bill's respect is already, it might have reached its ceiling, because even if Phoenix was to win, right, it's still like he'd still be the third option. So it's like, yeah, you got a
Okay.
ring, but you also were playing with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, two players who most people would probably put over you.
Mhm.
So, not to disrespect them, but I think when you're in those situations, what you're proving isn't like you trying to get a ring. So he's already proved himself as a player. And I don't think that we see Beal. I think the shot of him being somebody who enters some of them top conversations, whether it be per position or in general, I think those are done. I don't think that'll happen in his career. Not to say he's not a great player, he's just not the upper echelon of great players. And that's where I feel like PG falls into Hall of Famer. Both of them are probably, maybe. Well, I don't know about Bill. PG has a better case, but like both of them, like their names will be remembered. Like PG will be a Hall of Famer, but that's why it's like, yeah, PG, it would be great to see you play consistent and help the Clippers win a championship. But I don't really care about you proving that, because you've had 4 years to prove that. Granted, injuries, this, that, and the third, all of that, but I'm not putting no stock in that, saying this will change everything for him, because I also don't think a championship run changes much about PG's narrative. Like, yeah, if he plays well, the Clippers aren't cursed anymore. You know what I'm saying? But will we be surprised? Would it be PG proving much outside of, oh, I can actually, put up consistent numbers in the playoffs? So like maybe, but like how much will we care about that? We already know who PG is. So that's why he wouldn't be in the mix for me. I feel like a
Fair.
lot of players fall into that category for me, like the PG, Bradley Beal. That Book is interesting though. I agree. Book is in that 10.
Who is your 10 though? Qualls.
I don't even know where my list is after 5, because the names threw me off.
I got my 10.
Tatum was 1, Embiid was 2. Well, Embiid moving down because of the injury thing. So Tatum is 1, Dame is 2.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna put Jaylen Brown at 3.
I think that's fair. I had Embiid 3, but I think Jalen Brown goes 3. Embiid, Giannis. No, actually, Giannis 3 for me. Jalen Brown 4, Embiid 5.
Mhm.
Yeah, Brown, Embiid. I think I had Porzingis at 5. I think I'm gonna go Lucas 6.
I had
No,
Paul George
no, no,
6,
no, 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 no,
7.
no, 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 no. Wait,
Shea
Lucas
and
6, Lucas 6, Shea 7, and 8. Giannis 9, Booker 10.
Booker 10. All right, you want to know my 10th?
Mhm.
Nikola Joker.
What, Miguel?
That's insane.
Hey man, he got a ring over an 8 seed. They really saw no real comp. Um, one of the also easier rings in the last 5 years.
Who's the comp they missed out on, Gil?
Boston, Milwaukee. Um, in the West, who they face? Who they face really?
They eat Boston alive. Milwaukee maybe has the better chance because
Late
Miguel,
defensively.
what are you
they face a
talking about?
40-year-old Braun. Western Conference Finals is really just kind of a
Miguel, what are
for
you
them.
what are you talking
This
about?
is ChatGPT.
This is ChatGuelPT.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving you what I've seen on X, what I've seen on Facebook from like, distant uncles that, have topics of interest that include basketball. I think, he's just good at raising horses. He, hits a lot of lucky shots. They didn't really wow me. I mean, Adam Silver really chose him to win last year, so I mean, they got to prove it to me by winning twice. Luka's the GOAT. I mean, he has nothing to prove to me. 34 a game, almost a triple double. No respect given to my, I was about to say something crazy on that note.
Actually, did you finalize your list of 10?
I did.
Yep, she said PG was her 10th and final.
So can you go through your 10 again?
Yeah. JT 1, Jaylen Brown 2, Dame 3, Embiid 4, Cat 5, AD 6, Zion 7, Book 8, Brad 9, PG 10.
Damn, I feel like Zion should replace somebody on my list.
That man's got nothing to prove. That man's eating tables. He's he's
I mean,
good.
he's a number one pick. Like,
I give him one more year.
I think you know what? Zion can replace Ant.
The Cajun King.
I'll remove Ant. Zion should be in there before Ant. Because I also trust Ant to do what I was
I
referring
do
to
too.
earlier. I believe he will.
Yeah.
I think it'll be more interesting to see whether this play from SGA translates to playoff series and playoff series wins at that. Because he'll need to be a 30-point per game scorer, potentially higher, to get through the West at that. So yeah, I could swap Ant for Zion. Because Zion's looked the best he has probably in his
Yeah.
entire career. So yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting list. Even though it's an AI list at that. But
Amen. Amen. Real deal Holyfield.
crying. But
All right.
but that has been another episode of the Right Quality Podcast. Until next week, next time, we'll catch y'all. Peace.